to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
Well, look who it isn't. Liam Kennedy, NewcastleWorld.com. How are you?
I'm really good, Steve. It's really good to be back on. I was just sitting there listening to that little intro and thinking, God, it feels like a long time since I've sat waiting for this, for the live to take over. So now it's really good to be back.
Well, the rumours of a fallout between us have been greatly exaggerated. You obviously have had a lot to crack on with in your personal life, with your work life, etc. And every time that happens and somebody says they need a break, we're only too happy to do it. Joe Walker, Toon Tipster's on a sabbatical at the minute. So, from our perspective, you're always welcome back, that. And it's good to have you back on and hopefully be able to tease you back out of retirement at some point when things aren't as busy for you. But since we last spoke, wow, let's talk Newcastle first, mate. I mean, unbelievable, really, to see, how far we have come in a short space of time. And 12 months ago or 13 months ago, you and I were, sitting on NUFC matters, a bit down in the dumps because we thought the takeover wasn't going to go through. And then we had that monumental occasion where it did. And did you think, 13 months ago that, we would be sitting third in the Premier League, into the later stages of the Carabao Cup, and with a decent draw in the FA Cup, and talking about potentially a Champions League finish and maybe a trip out at Wembley?
Yeah, well, I've already started dusting the passport off ahead of next season. I think there'll be a lot of Newcastle fans and journalists in the same mindset. I think everybody's kind of feeling like this is the season, probably a season ahead of where everybody expected them to be. Be interesting to see how they come back from this break, because there's two ways of looking at the break, and I know a lot of people have looked at it in a negative and a positive way. The negative stance to looking at it says, look, they were in such a good run of form, they didn't want the break to come. I've never really bought into that idea. Two things for me. The first one being that they had a break in the summer and they came back even stronger. And the second one, if there is a weakness of this Newcastle United unit, it's the squad size and the depth. So when they get a few injuries, the fear is that things could drop off. Perfect to have a little mid-season break, just to make sure you get everybody back up to speed. And it's been mentioned by one of my colleagues in the national media, Craig Hope, consistently during this break. I remember talking to him in the pub just before we went off the final game of the break, and he said the same thing. And he said, you would not want another coach in English football to have time off working away with the players. And I can't agree with that anymore. Eddie Howe's stock's never been higher. The manner in which Newcastle United have done this doesn't feel like luck, doesn't feel like a fluke. It's been consistent improvement. Consistent improvement even before results improved. Everybody, probably even him, had doubts back in January before the turnaround came. But that hard work put in during that period, a really tough period, is really starting to pay dividends. And I was away in Austria with the lads in the summer. Some of those games were tough to watch, but then the Benfica game came along in Portugal. We had Jordan out there, and the signs were there that day that, look, this Newcastle United side can maybe go toe-to-toe with some good sides. And then we had the home games against the likes of Athletic Bilbao, who are sitting in the Champions League places in Spain themselves. So they're no poor side. A load of players at this World Cup really showed that Newcastle United can compete and take teams, high-level European teams, all the way in games. I think it's been incredible, Steve. And you look back over the 13 months, is that what it is now, 13 months? Mm-hmm. And it's been just an incredible transformation. And what feels great about this is the sustainability of the transformation. So we're talking about a football club that's putting key pillars in place which have never been there before. When Newcastle United finished fifth on Alan Pardew 10 or so years ago, it always felt like it was built on sand. It never felt like there was going to be any progressive thinking, any consistency with that kind of finish. It was by luck rather than judgment in many ways. This approach that they're taking at the moment, the owners, where they're bringing in lots of people in key positions, treating every part of the football business with the care that it deserves, making sure the right people are in the right jobs, making the right decisions, then that's the type of club that kind of is built for sustainable success. And that's the biggest thing about this. Newcastle United might not finish in the Champions League this year. They might not finish in the Europa League positions this year. But it does feel like they're a club heading in the right direction. And how many clubs in English football at the moment can you genuinely say are on an upward trajectory? There aren't really that many, particularly at the top end of the division. You can make a case to say Liverpool are on a downward trajectory. We're seeing rats jumping off a sinking ship, it feels like, with their infrastructure behind the scenes. Seeing Klopp complaining. Manchester United, you would say, are potentially on a small upward trajectory, but they've still got a lot of big bumps in the road to overcome. And of course, expectation is much higher there than it is at Newcastle United. Chelsea, can you really say they're on an upward trajectory? I would argue not. They've actually had a really good season, mostly, but it appeals in comparison to the type of seasons that they've had in the past. So I would argue there aren't really that many clubs on an upward trajectory. There's none of these also, people who want to break the top six really doing it. Brighton's on an upward trajectory, but again, there's a lot of uncertainty there. And have they got a ceiling? The positive about Newcastle United is, and there was a lot of talk about this a few months ago, is there is no ceiling at Newcastle United. There is a ceiling that they will hit, but it feels a long, long way off at the moment. It feels like this club's only just getting started. And what I would point towards is, and it's been a massive development over the last few weeks, we've known Manchester United's been up for sale for a long time, if not publicly, behind the scenes. Liverpool is always ripe for the picking if somebody wants to take it at a very, very high price. And that has been publicly put up for sale now. What we're seeing is the type of ownership models and structures who don't feel like they can compete. They thought they could go toe-to-toe with a Chelsea, with a Man City. There's a realisation now that this competing at the very top level in English football and European football is going to take a lot of money and a lot of will and a lot of success consistently, a lot of resource. Newcastle United have got that. And how good does that feel to say that? That the domino effect of the Saudi takeover at Newcastle United, seeing the rug swept from beneath the feet at Liverpool, at Manchester United, Chelsea for different reasons, of course, nothing related to Newcastle United, but it's quite a nice place to be. I think a place in the Champions League for me, whether it happens this season again, I don't think there's any pressure on Newcastle United to do it. But I think there's a couple of gaping holes in that top four at the moment, and the rise of Newcastle United, even quicker than anybody expected, is causing a lot of headaches in boardrooms, commercial departments, football scouting departments. It's causing headaches all over the place. And who'd have thought it? Little old Newcastle United, the team that just turns up, the team that's the also-rans of the Premier League for so long, the happy to be there mob that owned before. Little old Newcastle United, who knew we could ever cause this amount of chaos in English football at the top end of it. And like I said, it feels like they're only just getting started. I think I can, you know me, and I've always said on here, even before takeover talk, that I always believed these days would come back. I didn't know how, but by hook or by crook, I knew these days would come back, and they're closer than ever. And to me, again, it's going to be a ridiculous statement. I'm happy to be quoted and taken back on this in 5-10 years' time if it hasn't happened, but silverware is closer than ever for me. I think that the thing that's eluded most living Newcastle United fans at the moment is that trophy. And I think, for me, we're within a couple of years, maybe not 2 years, but I think we're within the next 5 years. I think you'll see a black and white shirt with silverware over the head. And that'll be a really proud moment for so many people in this area. Really proud moment. And I think it's closer than many people think. There's so much of a mindset, and it's such a Newcastle thing to do. Sorry, Steve, tell us to shut up because I've done the 10 minutes here. You know me.
People have missed you.
I think there's such a Newcastle mindset, and people still do it this season. They're sitting now going, oh yeah, we can do it. We can get in the Champions League. But then really in the back of their mind, they're going, oh no, something will go wrong. Something will go wrong and we'll not do it. There's no reason. There's no reason now for any of that negative undertone. Because why not? Ask yourselves why not instead of why. Why not? Why can Newcastle United not do that? And why can't they go and win a trophy in the next couple of years? Just because they've failed so often in the past doesn't make any difference. It's a new day, a new game, and they've got a squad that really believes. They've got a manager who's already proven in the year that he's been at the football club how astute he is. We've got a manager that many people scoffed and laughed when, I think it was Mairdad, talked of Eddie Howe in the realms of he can be our Sir Alex Ferguson. And many people scoffed and laughed and joked about that at the time. But there was a lot of sense in what he said, in that Eddie Howe is untested at many levels in English football. But so are Newcastle United, and they can grow together. And as long as Eddie Howe keeps improving Newcastle United, because the club will leave him and take him behind if he doesn't keep moving in the right direction. But he's proven he's taken the club on faster than anybody at the football club thought was possible. And if he continues in that trajectory, then he's going to be ranked as one of the best managers in English football, hence one of the best managers in world football, if he achieves something at this football club, which hasn't achieved anything for so long.
Yeah, I would agree, mate, 100%. Who's been your star player so far, then? There's a couple to pick from, I would say.
Yes. So lots of stars, but I actually want to shine a light on somebody who I think really flies under the radar, in my opinion. He was the best player in pre-season, in my opinion. I haven't watched all of the pre-season games, and consistently is playing the best football of his Newcastle United career, having been here since, I think he signed in the promotion, the year after promotion, the first season. It's Fabian Schär for me. I think Fabian Schär, Sven Botman, because he's new and he's a flash big signing, has taken a lot of the credit. And wow, what a player he is, by the way. What a player. Fabian Schär has literally never put a foot wrong all season. Never been out of position. Never been less than a 7 or 8 out of 10 every week. And that's probably been his problem, is that we know he can do the 8 out of 10s, but there's always been a 5 in there as well, where he'll switch off and he'll give a daft goal away, or he'll not mark somebody at a corner, let them go. None of that this year. None of that. Really, really good. Of course, everybody knows the type of players I'm going to point towards. Bruno's incredible, and Kieran Trippier, absolutely incredible. A lot of what Newcastle, if you take those two players out of Newcastle's team, they're missing huge parts of it. Huge parts. Kieran Trippier is probably one of the only players I've ever come across who almost dictates play from right back, and he's done that since the day he walked through the door. A lot of the positive stuff that goes through him, that Newcastle do in the forward areas, goes through him. Even a lot of Miguel Almiron's improvement has been down to Kieran Trippier, because many people who sort of sit there in the Millburn will know exactly what I'm talking about here. But obviously, where we are, where the players come out the dugouts, you can hear Kieran Trippier talk Miguel Almiron through the whole game, telling them where to drop in, when to go, where to move, where come in here all the time. And a lot of that positional play is probably the stuff that Almiron doesn't come naturally to him. But he's been exemplary. And of course, obviously, I'm going to point towards Miguel Almiron, because I did not see the improvement coming, being brutally honest. He was a player that I would have said towards the back end of last season in the summer, if he leaves and you can get a little bit of money for him, then it was probably a positive move. Wow, how wrong have I been proven? I mean, the guy's added incredible end product to his game. Really suits this Eddie Howe system. Really, really suits the leading pressing from the front, the closing of gaps really quickly, the high energy, high intensity presses that they have. Always looked like he could suit it, but has since added a lot more to his game. He's always had that in him, that sort of curling left foot shot, but hasn't shown it all that often and often enough. Could it be a confidence thing? Possibly. Could it be a not? I don't think Miguel Almiron has ever had a place in the team. And what I mean by that is, I don't think he's ever nailed himself down in saying, right, he's the first name on the team sheet in X position. I don't think Miguel Almiron's ever had that. He's always been somebody who's, we need somebody to play on the left, or we need someone to play 10, we need someone under Steve Bruce to play midfield. He's always just filled in because of his attitude, because of his high, energy levels. It's like, just chuck him in and he'll do a job. And I think he's probably suffered. This is the first time when he's been brought in on that right-hand side. And again, I say Fabian Schär was my star of pre-season. Almiron was up there too. But he's been one of those players that has found a home in this team. Almost probably for the first time in his Newcastle United career, feels really valued in the team by the manager, by his peers, by the players in and around him. And we're seeing that flourish. We're seeing a player really grow into the team. And he's gone from probably a player who I would say most people wouldn't have been all that disappointed had he left. Of course, he had his fans and everybody likes his attitude and the way he plays. But I think a lot of people would have accepted the idea that he would potentially leave, being a fringe player, not an automatic starter. I think most people in their first, if they'd had to name a team in the summer, would probably have picked Ryan Fraser potentially ahead of him. And I think that goes a long way to say that Ryan Fraser now is a player who is almost ready for the chopping block. I think he's one who's going to be probably, if not January, probably definitely the summer, will be one of those players that leaves. A player I've not seen the best of course. But a lot of that's down to Almiron. And of course, other players in and around that, like Jacob Murphy, who shows an incredible attitude and is actually the most capped player under Eddie Howe in his time here. And that says something about Jacob Murphy, who has a lot of doubters. And for me, is he really, really top level? Of course he isn't. And I think he probably knows that himself, but he makes up for that in attitude and running. And I think Eddie Howe likes him because he brings legs to a game when everybody else is tiring. I think that's why he's got the most appearances of anybody under Eddie Howe, is because he always brings them off the bench to give them that little bit of running, and he does his defensive work too. But yeah, Miguel Almiron, of course, is the standout. But the under-the-radar Liam Kennedy pick for player of the season is Fabian Schär for me, simply because he's just been exemplary in his work, and they really missed something. Anybody who was at the League Cup game, the Crystal Palace game, will know exactly what I mean. Because as soon as you take Schär and Botman as a pair out of that team, Newcastle United are weaker for it, because they haven't got the ball players playing centre-half who can move it quickly, can spread it both sides. And that stretches a game, because Newcastle have got 4 or 5 players now. If you bring Shelvey potentially back in at some point, you've got 3, 4, 5 players who can spread balls left to right and move it really quickly. And that's what wins you games. I mean, looking at Euros at the moment, the teams that are succeeding the best are the ones who press and the ones who move the ball really well through the middle. One thing that England maybe don't do as much, and probably should do a little bit more of, and when they do look really good doing it. But Newcastle United are a perfect example of a team who move it around really well, but also press when needed. And they're a really formidable side. Be interesting to see how some of the top brains in the division during this break get to grips with Newcastle United's style, because they will get worked out at some point, this style. How can Eddie Howe continue to tweak and transition this team into making them a different prospect in different games and tough to plan against? That's the hardest thing about a football team, is evolving. You see that at Liverpool in particular, because the style that Eddie Howe has implemented here very much reminds me of the Jurgen Klopp gegenpress type idea that he swept through English football when he first came to Liverpool. Was really transformative. There's a lot of similarities in the way that Newcastle United are playing in that sense now. And that got found out. It took a couple of years, but it got found out. A lot of people started trying similar, matching man for man, breaking, when working out when they sort of break the press, the spaces and you can't get through. But that hasn't happened for Newcastle United. It'd be interesting to see whether your Guardiola's, or the top manager in this division can work that out. But one of the people who often does work Newcastle United out was Graham Potter. And we've seen in that last home game of the season that he was totally outmanoeuvred by Eddie Howe, which is a rare one. We've often seen his Brighton teams, whether we're playing well and whether they're not playing well, often outpass, outrun, dominate, have more possession than Newcastle. And it was the exact opposite when Chelsea came. So I think there's a lot to like about what Eddie Howe's done here. But yeah, back to that. Almiron, class. Fabian Schär, under the radar, class. And honourable mentions for Trippier, Bruno, Botman, Callum Wilson.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, to be fair. Great first half. Let's hope the second half is just as successful. A news story that broke over the weekend on Friday, actually, was on World Cup Breakfast Report on Sky Sports News, and it was Jack Grealish apologising over his Almiron insult. And the quote from Jack Grealish that Sky used was, "I'm actually buzzing the way he's reacted. He said something about me in the interview the other day, and he wished me the best." I thought, what a guy, man. Because if that was me and somebody had said that about me, I'd have probably been the other way. He seems like the most harmless, nice guy. It's a fair play. I'm buzzing for him. Do you think that Kieran Trippier, Nick Pope and Callum Wilson have had a word?
I don't know about that. I think it shows it was a real moment of immaturity for Jack Grealish to say what he said about a fellow professional. But it actually shows a moment of considered, sober maturity to come out and say what he's done here, because he didn't have to do that. Many lesser people would have let it lie, would have just tried to crack on. But he didn't. He apologised. He's addressed the matter, which is a really positive thing. And he's right about Almiron. For the time he's been here, he actually doesn't speak a whole lot of English. So, as others have said, it probably went over his head largely, but it mattered to Newcastle United fans. It mattered to everybody else. I know Eddie Howe was really keen to sort of dismiss that too. But yeah, I think it shows actually a real maturity from Jack Grealish to come out and do that, because a lot of other people probably wouldn't have done the same. And I wish them all success, because I really actually do like Jack Grealish as a player. I still believe he's a little bit lost at Manchester City, and would have been a fantastic player for somebody like Newcastle United. I think I picked him actually as my signing that I would have made had it gone through previously, before obviously, of course, Manchester City came in, because I do think he's a fantastic footballer. But yeah, fair play to him. I actually really respect that, him coming out and owning up to the obvious. He realises he made an error of his ways.
They might not have had a word with Jack Grealish about that, but they've certainly been talking to James Maddison, who has come out and admitted as much in an interview that he's had a bit banter with Trippier, Pope and Wilson about a potential move to Newcastle. And the transfer window is not too far away. Maddison, we've spoken about it before, Liam, on the show. You know, he was one of the players I wanted in the very first transfer window that the new owners had. My mind still hasn't changed. I'd still love to see him in a black and white shirt. I think he'd be the perfect fit. Do you think we can get him?
I don't think it'll be a short-term deal. I don't think it's one that can get done short-term, but I think he's one they'll keep an interest in. I think when James Maddison becomes available, probably in the summer, I think there'll be a fair few suitors, because his statistics in the Premier League are quite incredible, actually. His goal involvement, the amount of goals that he scores, assists, all kinds of goals as well. He's an excellent footballer. Of course, there's been question marks about his character and things like that, about how he fits into teams and things like that. But I think you can look past a lot of that because of the qualities that he has. And I think if Eddie Howe's willing to look past that kind of stuff, then who is a real scrutinizer of that element in players' game, then I think it'd be an incredible addition. But like I say, I think January, and it's been talked about by quite a lot of journalists about the January window. It isn't going to. I don't imagine it's going to be the type of window that we have seen in the last two. It's more probably going to be about tweaks, adjustments, improvements, very much in the manner that we're seeing at the moment. Your Garan Kual type signings, your players who improve not only the fringes of the first team, but improve the infrastructure below. Sign players who will then be sent out to get experience immediately and won't see any Newcastle United shirt probably for a year. That'll be the type of signings that we might see in January, with the thinking that if somebody like a James Maddison becomes available, if Leicester start hawking James Maddison around for 30, 25 million in January, then Newcastle United would be at the table and they would be talking about getting that type of deal done. But because of the success of the team this season, which has surpassed expectations internally, I don't really think they feel the need. There's a lot of talk. A lot of people say, look, they'll just go. If they go again, you never know what can be achieved. But I think you've got to remember there's been a lot of planning gone into the short, medium and long-term plans at Newcastle United. There was a lot of building blocks to put in place. And they're not going to start knocking those building blocks down just for a short-term fix. So they're gonna make sure that, in my opinion, from what I hear and have spoken to, there is a lot of long-term plans in place. And I don't think they're going to go out and smash through that and say, you know what, we're going to finish. We can win the league this season if we go and sign 3 players for 60 million quid, and then you get to the summer and they've finished 4th. And they've got no money to spend in the summer, even though they've qualified for the Champions League, because they basically just spent their full allowance for the 3, the FFP within 3 years, etc. So I think they're going to be sensible about it. Which, although people look at it and say, but they've spent 200 million, they haven't been sensible so far. They actually have. They could have gone out and spent a lot more money than this, easily. They could easily have gone and done what Everton have done, and others, where they signed Premier League also runs for 40 to 50 million quid and on massive contracts on 200 grand a week, and never get European football in the back of it. This isn't what Newcastle United's building. Wage structures are very much a big part of what they're doing, and that's going to have to move. That dial will have to be turned heading into the summer, in my opinion. The dial will probably have to start to be turned with Bruno Guimaraes off the back end of this World Cup, with new deals, etc. But it's very sensible what they're doing. Speaking to people at the club, they don't want to upset too many people with the deals that they do, because they realise they're building something steadily. If you go and sign like all the rubbish about Ronaldo and stuff and see things you see, if you go and bring Ronaldo in on 400 grand a week, then I think you've got Callum Wilson, Alan St. Maximin, John Joe Shelby, Bruno Guimaraes, probably Kieran Trippier, and a couple others knocking on your door within half an hour of that deal going through and saying, right, well, where's my 300 grand then? Where's my 200 grand? And it just becomes unsustainable then. But there's a real sustainability about what they're trying to do, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, me too, mate. It's just a feel-good factor, which just, it's taken a little bit of time to get used to. The old Stockholm syndrome that Mitch was talking about in those early days of the takeover has been there for all of us to feel. But gradually, as games, pass us by, it feels, a little bit more confident when you're sitting there. You don't feel as if that equaliser is going to come. You don't feel like Newcastle's going to get beaten. The unbeaten run continues, which is great. I'm going to ask you a question which has been asked to a lot of people on the platform over the last few months, and that is, what would you prefer? Would you prefer Champions League finish and, getting knocked out of the cups, or would you prefer that elusive trophy and finishing maybe just outside the European positions on this occasion? Or, which a lot of people have said, you want both?
Well, of course, that's the obvious answer, isn't it? But if you had to put us down to only the two options, so you finish 8th and win the League Cup, so that'll be a base. So you'd be outside the European spot, and you would win the lesser of the 2 trophies that you currently probably can win, or finish, let's say 2nd in the Premier League. Finish 2nd in the Premier League, which is as high as you could get without winning a trophy. I would take 8th and a League Cup every day of the week. I don't think, for me, it's not even close. We've finished 2nd before. And what did we get? Did it give you any sense of fulfillment? Do you ever look back on those? Of course, everybody's got nostalgia, but do you really look back on those 2nd place seasons and say, yes, get in and really, really think that was a success? It wasn't. It was a glorious failure. That's all. That's all. The 2nd place, particularly one of them, was just a glorious failure in a really enjoyable time, but ultimately was a failure. A League Cup would be a success, and it would be the type of thing that goes up in a trophy cabinet. Physical medals, not losers ones. Physical winners' medals go round black and white shirts. That, to me, is success. That's what football's about. You don't play football to finish 2nd. You play football to win. And winning a trophy, for me, would surpass finishing the Champions League. With the idea, Steve, and this is just taken as a microcosm in one season, this is easily softened by the idea that if they don't get in the Champions League this year, they'll just do it next year anyway. So let's have the trophy. What's your thoughts? What's your answer if you ask the same?
I want both. I mean, my feeling has changed over the course of the last 6 months because of the way we're playing. I can see that winning a trophy and finishing fourth is achievable, and I think further progression in the transfer window, which I think will happen this January, will cement our position. I get your point about being concerned about the other teams working us out, but it's not really a magic formula that Eddie Howe's found. He's specialising in fitness, hard work, closing down, and being able to pass a ball. I mean, it's all the things that Newcastle United have failed to do, in many, many years. And suddenly we're doing it. And the fears about Callum Wilson's fitness still hang over the club, of course. But when Callum Wilson hasn't played, Newcastle have still found a way to win and score goals. And that's really important. And if you add in Isak in January, when we return, Isak comes back, hopefully fully fit.
Like a new signing.
which again is one of those horrendous things that we used to say when we were crap.
Yeah.
But now that we're a good team, we've got Isak coming into this.
I know.
Where the hell does he fit in? And then, your back four is really we've got a back eight. Whenever we ever had 4 centre halves who could all play in any of the teams, in and around us, with the exception of probably Liverpool and Man City, let's say, most people would take any one of our centre halves. Yeah. We've got strength and depth with full backs to an extent. Kraft's injury was a nightmare, but ultimately we've just got so many positive things to talk about. So for me, fourth place and a win in the Carabao Cup is doable this year. The problem then is Eddie Howe said he's held a benchmark, and he's given himself a nice problem, but a difficult problem, because anything below that next season is looked on as failure.
Let's give you that. You've got to answer the question though. So Newcastle United finish second, don't win the title, finish second, Champions League, as high as you possibly can without winning the trophy, or 8th, miss out on the European spot and win a cup.
It's got to be win a cup every time for me, because I haven't seen Newcastle win a trophy, and now there's a lot of people, in the same age bracket as me. The youngsters would love it. We would love it. Those who are slightly older saw the Fairs Cup, the Fairs Cup win, and those who are a lot older, saw the FA Cup wins in the 50s. But it's the trophy every time for me. It's got to be, hasn't it?
Yes. I mean, of course, everybody, before anybody comes on and criticises, of course, you would get a European place if you win a trophy. But this is the hypothetical bit about it. Would you have a trophy, a Europe? For me, it would always be a trophy.
Yeah, it's got to be, mate. It's got to be. There's no doubt about it. Talking of trophies, FA Cup. The announcement over the weekend is that the game against Sheffield Wednesday will be broadcast live on BBC One and BBC iPlayer. Game will take place Saturday, the 7th of January, 6 o'clock kickoff. The FA Cup, again, is it's a trophy we've got history with. Which one would you like to win the most, the Carabao or the FA? I've got to be honest, either one would do me. But the FA Cup's we've got a bit of history with that.
It's nice to be picky and choosy, isn't it? We're normally out of competitions and have got no hope in them. There'd be a nice completing the set feel about winning the League Cup, simply because obviously we haven't won it before. So that'd be quite nice to do. But ultimately, I would rather win the FA Cup because of its prestige. Of course, it's taken a knock over the last, from when I was a kid, it was something everybody watched from start to finish on that given day that it was on. It's almost now just an afternoon kickoff, isn't it? It's just the afternoon kickoff, and you watch a bit of it if you're around. It hasn't got the same prestige that it did, but in terms of winning trophies, it's much of a higher level than the League Cup. And for me, it would have to be the FA Cup. Would be a beautiful sight, wouldn't it? Seeing a Newcastle player holding that. No longer do we have to hark back to the stock Getty images or whatever they may be from 1955. We can actually see it for real. And I can't imagine the clamour for tickets. What it would be like if
a nightmare.
it would be quite incredible. There'd only probably be 25,000 could probably get in there, but you'd probably be looking at 300,000 people trying to get one from a Newcastle United perspective. So yeah, I think it'll be a beautiful thing. It'll be a beautiful thing when it happens, not if.
Okay, halfway through the show, time for a quick ad break. A big thanks to all of our sponsors, starting off with Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. The website is www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks also to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. Find them at thegohd.com. Thanks also to 3 Properties, and they specialise in sourcing investment properties for their clients who are looking to invest in the Northeast. They offer a full in-house service from sourcing the deals to managing the properties for you. They've done over 100 plus deals in the past 12 months for clients all over the UK. Give them a follow on Instagram, matty.patter_northeast property and phil.reed_northeast property, or email phil@3property.co.uk if you're interested in getting a good property deal. Big thanks also to Mr. Vicky's sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickys.co.uk, or order some of the sauces by calling 01768 210 102 or emailing info@mrvickys.co.uk. Thanks also to Blowhole Brewery, and their cans are vast and in the shape of the old Newcastle United strips from the 1990s. Bonnie Blonde, Geordie Juice, and Fog of the Tyne. Some great beers. Get yourself to blowholebrewery.co.uk to order your cans in for the festive period. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button on the bottom right-hand corner. Hit the like button and click share. Please join the channel as well to support us. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to join the channel, you can use this QR code or just go to nufcmatters.com and look for membership pack. If you join in that particular way, you get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card, and entry into the monthly draw. We also give you a free car sticker. All you need to do is subscribe to the show and then email john@nufcmatters.com to claim it. We also support the food bank on this channel, nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. Go to that website and make a virtual donation today. A couple of events coming up. Paul Gascoigne is at the Fed on the 4th of December. Contact the Fed in Dunstan and Gateshead for more information. And Peter Beardsley, 20 tickets left for this, is at St. Dom's Catholic Club in Newcastle on the 10th of February next year. Contact St. Dom's via their contact details on their website or on Twitter. If you're looking for a Christmas present for a Newcastle fan, you can go to badboysbooks.net. You could order a copy of Enemy from the Bender Squad to the Gremlins, or the last remaining copies of Black or White, No Grey Areas by Lee Clark and Will Scott. If you're looking for a Christmas jumper for your night out, go to nufcmatters.com and get your Bruno jumper today. England have done very well. Top of the group, Liam, nine goals scored. But the fickle nature of football fans has been evident in the World Cup run so far. We beat Iran 6-2. Everyone said we were going to win the World Cup. We drew against America 0-0, and it was Southgate out, and that's it. We've blown it. Then we beat a very poor Wales team 3-0, and suddenly it's coming home again. Is there some middle ground? Are you getting carried away? Senegal in the next round, potentially France in the quarters. What's your take on England's World Cup run so far?
I think everybody's standpoint is actually quite valid. I think it isn't black and white. There's a lot of grey when it comes to evaluating the time of Gareth Southgate. Has he? If you ask purely a black and white question, has he done a good job as England manager? You can't answer anything but yes. He's done an incredible job. Does he have? Does he seem to have the nous actually to navigate England through tournaments, tough games or not? Yes, and qualification as well. Done a really, really good job in his time there. We know a lot about the squad unity, etc. Making England the England shirt, bringing some pride back to that, even for the top players at top clubs wanting to play for England again. We know all about that. We don't need to go over that. It's incredible what he's done in that respect. But I don't believe, in my opinion, that it's unpatriotic. I don't know why everybody has to be black or white on this. I don't believe Gareth Southgate is a top-level manager in respect to certain in-game decisions, even though he's made some really good ones in this tournament. And you have to see what you've seen previously. I believe a top manager closes the game out against Croatia in 2018. I believe a top manager closes the game out, goes and wins 2 or 3-0 against Italy in that final, having gone 1-up, and then closes a game out. I don't know whether he's got that in his locker or arsenal. It's interesting to know because he's actually doing a lot of his learning on the job internationally. So probably only really does a lot of the training work around the team. How many days a year does he really get with these players? 50? Does he get 50 days a year with these players to train? It's a very transient game. He's actually having to select squads and teams on club form a lot of the time. I actually respect some of his decisions with regards to the likes of Harry Maguire. I know he's taking a lot of criticism. It seems such an easy thing to do. And Jordan Pickford, by the same token. Would I swap Nick Pope for Jordan Pickford? Absolutely not even like under consideration. Would I have Ramsdale ahead of Pickford if we had to lose Nick Pope? It's not even close. It's absolutely not even close. But would I drop in the same position if I was Gareth Southgate? Would I drop Jordan Pickford? He's not. He's barely put a foot wrong for England in that time. So why would you drop him? And he talks about, everyone was like, wow, why is he picking Tomori? Why has he done this? He's won this in AC Milan, this, that, and the other. Literally, Harry Maguire was England's best centre-half at the Euros by some distance. Of course, he's had some real struggles with Man United, totally different pressure. Pulls on an England shirt and shock, he's actually shown himself to be an incredible defender at international level. And playing alongside him, I would argue, this is touch wood. I don't want to jinx anything, but I only say what I've seen so far. Is this not some of the best centre-half performances you've seen from John Stones? Is he not arguably playing his best football in an England shirt? A really good footballer. Player I would love to see at Newcastle United. I really rate John Stones. I think he's an excellent player. But he's probably playing his best football. I can't really argue. I respect the fact that he's stayed loyal to players who have not let him down at international level, despite the noise and the clamour from most people. Realistically, is there anybody else apart from Stones and Maguire who he could have picked, who would come in and instantly do a guaranteed job? I would argue there isn't really a whole lot of English defenders out there who are of any level. None that are really knocking on the door. People will say Ben White, whatever. Of course, there's been certain reasons as to why he's had to leave the squad. But there isn't a clamour. There isn't a load of players. There isn't a Marcus Rashford who's really knocking on the door in a centre-half perspective. Somebody who's probably been able to displace Raheem Sterling, who's an automatic pick in this team. There isn't that at the back. And I think it's not, going back to my original point, I feel like I'm waffling a bit, but going back to my original point, I don't think it's unpatriotic or it doesn't, you can be grey on the subject. I believe Gareth Southgate's done an incredible job for the England national team, but I also think he's got in key winners moments where winning managers go on to win trophies. I believe it's almost felt like he's gone into his shell and hasn't taken decisions that would impact games. I mean, we all saw that. We all watched it, the Italy final. And it felt like from half an hour in, it was falling through England's fingers. It was an inevitability about the fact they weren't going to win that game. It didn't have to be that way. There's no need for that to go that way. Italy had beaten some good sides on the run to that final, but the fact they didn't qualify for this World Cup has proven that they weren't top level. England could have got at them that day. They were at home, had the whole crowd behind them, and they went into their shell. And I put that a lot down to the manager, because there's a lot of players in that team who win things. It's not like they're not used to winning things. It was more about the general approach. And I hope we don't see that this time round. I think the draw with USA obviously got some criticism, but the amount of shocks that we're seeing from so-called minnows against established sides, whether they change their team or not, is actually, giving a bit of credit to that USA game, because on the balance of play, America probably deserved to nick that game. They had the better chances, played the better football, looked the more threatening without creating a boatload of opportunities, by the way. And England still got a result. And ultimately, that's what good teams do, even when you're not playing well. So when you're not playing well, the minimum is to not get beat. And that's the way I took the America result, is they didn't get beat. I had no doubt they'd beat Wales, because Wales are 3 to 4 years past anything. The two players that they had are long gone. We're seeing that with Ramsey at Rangers last season, could barely get a kick and was rubbish. And we're seeing that with Gareth Bale, went to Tottenham and turned up and they were like, what the hell have we signed back here? And couldn't get in. It's no shock. We know those players are well past their best. So it's no shock to me that England dismantled Wales with relative ease. Will Senegal? I think sometimes there's a large unknown about African teams and the way they cause threats to European sides, etc. I think you never know what you're going to get. You're going to get intensity. You're going to get passion. I've seen sort of little holes that you can probably get at in terms of organisation and other things with that Senegal team. And of course, they're missing their talisman, which is a big blow for them. They've done well to get through. I don't really see England having too many problems tomorrow, but I do think the pace and quality of that French team could cause England a lot of problems. And I think quarterfinals might be the time that England bow out. But I don't see them being outclassed or anything by France. I see it being a very tight game, which one goal, or dare I say penalties, would probably end up deciding that quarterfinal. And who knows? It could be a bit of redemption, and England could. They've had a few penalties against them going back Euros and things like that in the past against France, and defeats late on and things like that. And you never know, it could go the other way. But I think that's probably the tournament for England. And really, would that be seen as a failure in years gone by? It would be seen as a par score. And realistically, I think this time round it's probably seen as a par score-ish, if not a touch underachieved. But I don't see a quarterfinal defeat, were it to be on France on penalties or something like that, as a real failure. I would say it's probably about right. It's probably about where England are at the moment. They're probably not as good as they were a couple of years back, but they're not as bad as many people make out either. I mean, it's the frustration, I get it. Most people have the frustration about the idea of, can you not just take the handbrake off? Can we not allow these players to express themselves? There's a lot of good players who can express themselves in there. I think largely it's a lot to do with balance, and it comes down to that defensive unit. I think if he does allow them to go too much, that you're struggling defensively. One player who's really disappointed me in this tournament, actually, from an England perspective, I can talk about the players who've really impressed us. Marcus Rashford being one of them. I thought
He's been great.
Phil Foden was excellent the other night. The spaces he finds, the craft and the guile that he's got, the ability to just unlock something, just pick up a position that is hard to pick up. And I really like Phil Foden. It's just, Saka's been in incredible form. You take him out, I'd probably play Foden out there personally, in my opinion, and I'd probably play Rashford as well. But one that's particularly not impressed me, I think Luke Shaw's had a good tournament, actually. I think Luke Shaw's come in, considering he's a bit in and out for his club form over the last 2 years. I think he's had a good tournament. Declan Rice has disappointed me. I don't know what anybody else out there probably thinks of that, but I think he's a bit too backwards and sideways. Now, I don't watch West Ham all that often, but when I do see West Ham, I don't believe Declan Rice is as negative as that. I do believe he's a bit more progressive, moves the ball forward. It's probably what he's been asked to do. but I do believe he can be a bit more progressive. I feel like the game slows down a lot when it goes to Declan Rice and it comes straight back to the centre half or the fullback. And England need a little bit more than that. I was speaking about this with our people, and there was 2 key changes that he made in that Wales game that I thought really progressed England as a team. Now, are they arguably the best personnel to play? Probably not. But Calvin Phillips came on, dropped into that hole and started playing forward passes. It was actually quite incredible to see. Now, he's never going to bring Calvin Phillips in for Declan Rice. Declan Rice is one of his blue chip players and he'll play no matter what. But I watched that for 20 minutes and thought, wow, actually, there's a defensive midfielder who's sitting in, but he's actually looking forward rather than just looking straight back at his centre halves. And Callum Wilson was the other big change. I want to make a special mention to him because what Harry Kane's an incredible player, and I wouldn't drop Harry Kane for Callum Wilson. But Kane in this team, because England have so many players who want to play in those gaps, in those holes between midfield and defence. Foden, Saka, Rashford, Sterling, Grealish, any of these players, that's their home, that's where they live, that's where they make their living. In finding those gaps, Harry Kane drops into the same spots. And what happened when Callum Wilson came on is you all of a sudden had a striker playing 20 yards further up the park and playing on the shoulder. And it made a big difference because all of a sudden those midfielders who were crowded out in a really congested area had spaces to find little gaps themselves and places to run into. And it makes a big difference. So I think Callum Wilson could, with that performance, have probably got himself a couple more appearances, depending on how far England go. Because in the last 20 minutes of a game, he's going to push defences back and he's going to make those spaces much more stark for your game changers like a Grealish to come off the bench. Might be a Foden, might be a Saka, might be a Sterling to start picking up pockets of space because he occupies defenders in areas they don't want to be occupied. No defender on this planet wants to keep going a ball over the top. No defender wants to be absolutely hassled and harried, and that's what Callum Wilson does, where Kane hasn't got that. It's not part of his game. Technically, Callum Wilson, and I'm sure you probably agree with this himself, probably can't lace Harry Kane's boots. He's a good player, Callum Wilson, but Harry Kane is top level in terms of assists, creating goals for other people, dropping into holes. His finishing is incredible. His finishing is unbelievable, by the way. And I think a lot of people overlook that. But he's not really getting in enough positions to finish, is he, at the moment in this role he's playing? If he's playing as the central striker, I think it's to the detriment of the team in many ways. But I'm not a manager and I don't have the answer because I couldn't not play him. I couldn't not play Harry Kane. I'd have to play him. Is there some kind of system, and I've thought about this in the last few days, where you could play a striker like a Callum Wilson who plays on the shoulder, does a lot of the high pressing, gets England further up the park, and have Kane dropping in and around? Could you do something like that? He's not going to do that in a tournament, but it's something worth thinking about.
Yeah, I agree, mate, 100%. Look, it's exciting times as a Newcastle fan, and at the minute it's exciting time to be an England fan. I'm going to ask you the question about England first. Where do you think England are going in this World Cup? Can they win it? Where does Liam Kennedy think England will finish in this World Cup?
I think they can win it. Do I think they will? No, I don't think they will, but they absolutely can. I think there's probably only a list of maybe 3, 4, 5 teams that can. And I think I would put England on that list. I wouldn't put them as one of the top 2 or 3, but I would put them on the list, and they've got to be part of that conversation. They're going to need a bit of luck. They're going to need Harry Kane to probably start chipping in with a couple of goals. They're going to need some performances from their captain. And I think they've got half a chance. But I would, like I said, I went over earlier, if I had to predict now and put my money where I think it'll happen, I think it'll be a very narrow defeat in a quarter-final to France. I think that's what will probably happen. I just feel like France have got more quality in the forward areas. And that's Kylian Mbappe, isn't it? That's the thing. He's the type of player who can just electrify a game for 5 minutes with some of those runs that he makes, the positions that he takes up, the change of speed at such speed. It's incredible. There's very few defenders on the planet can live with him. That doesn't say I think France will win it. I still think the team, although they haven't really looked glittering in their performances. The team for me that looks the most balanced, defensively solid, cohesive is probably Brazil. But I think most people expected that, the personnel that they've got. A lot of talk about the forward areas, about the Neymars, Vinny Jr., all these kind of players. But for me, you just look at, the back line, the defensive unit that they have. Doesn't look like conceding goals. They look really solid. They look really good. And I think that'll be hard to beat for anybody moving forward in this tournament. So in short, I'd say England, can they win it? Yes. Do I think they will? No. And I think the quarterfinals will probably be where they do. And I think most people would agree with that probably will fall on that sword in England in the quarterfinals.
And Newcastle.
Right.
Where will Newcastle finish? How will their season finish?
I feel like I'm going to get
pressure.
I feel like I'm going to get beaten with this one. I think Newcastle will finish fourth.
Okay.
I think they'll finish in the Champions League. I don't think they'll win a trophy this season, but I think they'll finish in the Champions League. I do. I just don't see. We've played virtually every team this season, and there's nobody that I've looked at apart from Manchester City in flashes that I fear. Everybody else can be got at. I think the League Cup is the one, not the FA. I think the FA Cup will be won by probably Man City again. I think the one I look at is the League Cup, where you say if Newcastle are to win it, there's probably only about 3 or 4, probably 4 clubs that can win that League Cup now. Newcastle are one of those, which is bizarre, totally random and bizarre to say. But you look at it and say, the favourites for that would probably be the winner of the big game. It's Man City, Liverpool, isn't it? So the winner of that, one of those is going to go out. Yeah, arguably you'd want Liverpool to have a bit of an upset and beat Man City in that game, and then have Manchester United have got a good chance in that tournament. Leicester, although they've had an up and down season, can probably beat anybody on their day. So you'd imagine they've got a chance in the League Cup. And then everybody's real outsider would be someone like Brighton that can probably do it. But yeah, I think Newcastle would need. Sorry, I was going to go on about the League Cup there. So the League Cup is the first game back after the World Cup. Newcastle have already said it's probably going to be a push too far for anybody that's been involved in international duty to play at the World Cup anyway. So your Almirons and Woods and stuff will. But anybody outside of that who's going to the World Cup. So that game against Bournemouth on the 23rd of December, because that's when it is, just before Christmas, will not have Trippier, Wilson, Bruno, probably not Nick Pope either. So that's probably going to be a real detriment to Newcastle United's team. The main players, the spine, will not be playing in that game. Teams like Manchester United have got a lot of players at the World Cup. So they might struggle, whoever they've got, because they're going to be a lot of changes. How strong are Manchester City going to be for that game? How strong are Liverpool going to be for that game? So we could see a few teams really, it's interesting to see how strong those teams will be and what kind of results we get out of the back of that, because there's going to be a lot of players away who won't be playing in that 23rd game because of the quick turnaround. If Brazil make a final against, against anybody, Brazil, France, you're probably going to have half of Manchester United's squad involved in that final. Teams like that will struggle. Yeah. And it might be interesting to see what impact that has on the League Cup and how that plays out, because Newcastle will be weakened, but the top teams will be weakened as well. So I'm really intrigued to see what happens on that 23rd. And I think Newcastle can get through. But if I had to predict now, I think maybe a cup competition might be a step too far, because I still believe that in most big finals, semi-finals, one-off games, I still think there's teams with better quality than us. But you'll not find a more solid, cohesive team than Newcastle United in the league at the moment, and long may it continue.
Great stuff. Been great to have you back on, Liam. Don't be a stranger, mate. Even if we can get you on once a month, it would be great, mate. I know that the people out there love to have your opinion. It's a valued opinion, and you're much loved on this show by me and everybody involved. So, NewcastleWorld.com. Anything else you want to plug?
No, that's about it. We'll have Jordan Cronin going over to Saudi Arabia, so give him a follow and he'll have every coffin splitter that happens over there in Riyadh with the players. So yeah, give him a follow. But yeah, NewcastleWorld.com. Keep up the good work. You guys are reading our stories. You're interacting with our Facebook pages, our Twitter pages, and every interaction, every click is much appreciated, because ultimately that's what pays me bills.
And how's the dog?
2 dogs now, Steve.
2 dogs. Oh my God. Good stuff.
I'll get them on. We'll have a guest. Well, maybe have a Christmas guest appearance from the dogs.
All right, mate. Love to the family. Thanks for coming on, mate. Have a great weekend.
Yes.
Speak to you soon, mate. Take care.
Yes.